Okay. Okay, here's Mark Wells, the Rocket Man. Mark, tell me, you've been doing all this peroxide stuff. Is this one of the more fun projects you've done at Orion? Tell me, obviously, you've been at Orion for a while now. We're Dynetics, but you did all this as a Dynetics employee. We certainly never got to play with peroxide too much on the Orion side. Tell me about your experience. Why are you doing this, and what does this mean to you? As I understand, you've got peroxide in your blood. What are you building at home?
I started building a replica of the old Bell rocket belt a few years ago, but keeps getting pushed back. Maybe I'll get it done eventually. Building several of them.
So you're building a real rocket belt that's going to fly using peroxide.
I hope so.
Now tell me about that. As I understand, you actually build parts for people that we see on TV flying rocket belts right now.
I've been doing that for several years.
So what kind of parts have you built?
Control parts, valve parts, tanks.
Haven't you actually built the hand throttles that we might see a guy, the twist grips and things like that?
I've done that, and I've done some engineering on catalyst packs, the rocket motor. I haven't actually made anything, but I've done some engineering work on them also.
So if we want to see some of your hardware flying on YouTube, what kind of flights have they done with your rocket belt parts? Like, for instance?
There have been some flights up in Canada at air shows where one of the pilots, Eric Scott, there's only 2 people that fly these really in the world right now. Where he's done some flights in the past year. There was a Royal Gorge jump in Colorado, and I didn't have any parts you'd really be able to see, but I did some engineering work on their gas generator.
So you ended up engineering parts on the thruster that actually ended up doing the longest flight across a canyon in the history of rocket belts. Is that correct?
That'd be correct.
That's pretty cool. So that's a pretty interesting hobby. So you do all this as moonlighting.
It's just moonlighting.
And you also build a lot of flight hardware and optical instruments.
Flight hardware, and I do a lot of medical research instruments too as a little side business. I've been doing that for about 18 years.
That is cool. That's the kind of people we like working here. Yes. All right. Let's talk to Wayne over here. Wayne, what was your previous life before working on this lander?
I've been building rockets since I was 11. Started with the model rockets and eventually in high school started designing my own. My senior year of high school, I was actually a finalist in the very first Team America Rocketry Challenge, where we had to send an egg to 2 eggs to 1,500 feet on 2 or more stages, and my launch vehicle actually ended up on CNN.
Cool.
I'm a graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a bachelor's and master's in aerospace engineering. In 2008, I served an internship with Mast Space Systems and did a lot of the plumbing and repair work on the Maston Zombie, which later on won the second place in the Level 1 competition of the Northrop Grumman Lunar Lander Challenge.
Cool.
I started at Orion a few weeks after my graduation. LLTD was my first project, and Warm Gas here is the 3rd lander I've built in my 1.5-year professional career.
Cool. Cool. Now, what are your hobbies, Wayne? And besides rockets, you're also into some really cool stuff that's gained you some national fame, too. It's not just rockets. We all have our hobbies at home. What are they, Wayne?
I do prop replication in my free time. Myself and my upstairs neighbor run a little prop building group called 2-Story Props. I'm most noted for the Rocket City Ghostbusters, which is a volunteer group where we go to charities and other community events that need advertising as dressed as the Ghostbusters from the 1984 film, but as the local franchise.
Now, didn't you recently meet one of the main actors from Ghostbusters, and he actually did something?
I actually met Dan Aykroyd last May, and he signed one of my packs. I'm actually meeting with Ernie Hudson, who played Winston Zeddemore the first weekend in December.
Very cool, very cool. Now, you actually sell these, too, on the internet, right? No selling. Okay. Well, that's pretty intense, man. That's a pretty cool hobby, and that's pretty cool. I think everybody will be real excited to hear that too. Let's see, we've got Andy. Let's talk about Andy. Andy, why are you in this business?
I can't compete with these guys.
Well, that's all right. We all have our swords. I mean, we've got our. What's driving you here, Andy?
No, I've been interested in space since I was a little kid. I knew in the 8th grade I did a project on space stations, and from that point on, I knew I wanted to get involved in space. So really, I started wanting to be an astronaut, and it wasn't until college that I realized my eyes weren't good enough to be an astronaut, which just devastated me. But I decided
They
to
look
stay
good
in.
to us.
Well, not good enough for NASA, I'm afraid. I can't pass the requirement. So I've stayed in aerospace just to do the hardware, get into design. Right out of college, I focused more in rocket engines. I worked for Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne, and worked since then for Aerojet and some other companies, but mostly focused on rocket engines and advanced concepts, kind of design work. So, but the most fun, honestly, has been the hardware. You know, since I got to come to Orion and we started doing hardware. So getting to do these landers that fly hundreds of times and try out propellant combinations that other folks are scared to work with. And that's really fun stuff.
That's cool. Now, you came here because of the hardware, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we
Well,
had
that's cool.
a great contract with Boeing on NASA's Ares 1 project, and I wanted to come and be a part of that. So we're still working it.
And I think it's fair to say that everyone here today wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the hardware. Is that right? What- He likes to build things. All right. And what about you, Wayne? If you weren't doing hardware, if you were just doing PowerPoints, how long would you last? Not long.
Not long.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.